Get your eyes checked, because what you're about to see is probably illegal in your state.
Is there centaur pornography?
That is not a medical question.
Amazon is back with its latest original starring Legolas and that girl from Suicide Squad, and I'm here to take a deep dive into its ending and what it could mean for Season 2. So grab yourself a drink and watch out for Dark Ashers, because we're taking a trip to Carnival Row. Episode 8, titled The Gloaming, an Old English word for twilight or dusk, starts with Quill the Puck undertaking a mission to prove himself to the Hidden One. After being fired in Episode 2 for failing to protect Absalom Breakspear's son Jonah from being kidnapped, Quill is forced to the streets, eating from the garbage, when he's approached by a monk that worships the Hidden One. He hands him a copy of their holy book, known as the Ciphers, which contains stories that Quill's mother used to read to him as a child. The cipher symbol found on the book here can also be found to the entrance of their holy place. Meanwhile, Vignette Stonemoss attempts to escape jail but is stopped by racist Sergeant Dombey. She was put there after breaking into the Berg Museum, which featured an exhibition on the treasures of Tiernanog. In Episode 3, we get a glimpse of the Holy Library which Vin protects, only to find that it has been disassembled piece by piece to be shown as some novelty to the human folk who disdain Fey culture.
It was brought across the sea, timber by timber.
In an equally dire predicament is Rycroft Philostrate, a Berg inspector in charge of solving a slew of mysterious murders that have been plaguing the city. He's been held captive by Chancellor Breakspear after he was framed for the murder of Ashlyn Querelle, a Fey woman who was killed at the end of Episode 1. It turns out Breakspear had an affair with Ashlyn years ago, one which was held secret since human and Fey relationships are looked down upon. When his father found out about this tryst, he threatened to kill her unless Breakspear called it off. Ashlyn wanted to meet one last time to tell him something important, but as to not put her life in danger, he never showed up. As he says to Philo,
I was a coward.
That important thing she was to tell him? She was pregnant, and with the revelation that Ashlyn was Philo's mother, that makes Breakspear his biological father. It's also ironic that both Breakspear and Philo left the women they love for their quote-unquote own safety, but as Breakspear said, it was really cowardice. This is a mistake Philo won't make again at the end of the season, where he embraces his half-blood Fey roots and ventures to Carnival Row to be with Vin. Speaking of leaving women for their own safety, Fergus and Mr. Agreus get in a row over Agreus' affair with Imogen Spurnrose. As Agreus' servant, Fergus has heard through the grapevine that members of the community have been suspicious of their recent, let's just say, closeness. To protect her, Agreus must call things off, and he does it in quite possibly the worst way ever.
The truth, Miss Imogen, is that you are a callow and graceless lover, and yesterday was utterly forgettable.
But Imogen sees through this charade, willing to pay the price for love. But can Agreus?
There are some pursuits even I can't afford.
Of course, Imogen's pervy brother is watching through the window. Piety Breakspear confronts her son about his affair with Sophie Longerbane, their family's political rival. Such an affair could jeopardize their family's reputation and everything Piety has worked for all these years.
That girl is twice as dangerous as anything on the road.
But Jonah isn't budging. He's in love, not just with Sophie, but her lust for power. The only way Piety can sway Jonah is by telling him the truth, that Sophie is his sister. You see, years ago, Ritter Longerbane was a rival for Piety's affection, and they ended up having a child, Jonah. But Piety left Longerbane for Breakspear, likely because of a prophecy she was given. This prophecy stated that she would marry a great man, that man being Absalom Breakspear, but his son would be even greater. What she didn't know is that son wasn't Jonah, rather Philo. Here's where things get a little more complicated. The thing that triggered the events of Carnival Row was a letter written to Piety, a letter allegedly from the mother of Breakspear's bastard son to extort Breakspear for money. She would go to the papers and tell them the current chancellor had a half-blood son unless she was paid. Of course, this letter wasn't written by Ashlyn Querelle, but rather Sophie Longerbane in an attempt to cause chaos.
Why did you do this?
Because chaos creates opportunity.
For what?
For us.
Sophie's quest for power is achieved through this chaos. With Jonah, she talks about how only through chaos can new powers arise.
Chaos is the great hope of those in the shadows. Chaos for men like your father creates opportunity for people like you and me. Regimes fall. Old worlds burn.
And we decide what rises from the ashes.
This is similar to the work of Naomi Klein, who argues in her book The Shock Doctrine that the exploitation of national crises, such as an economic collapse, a natural disaster, or let's say political assassination, can be used to push through controversial policies while citizens are too emotionally and physically distracted by these things to mount an effective resistance. But this revelation, that Breakspear had another son, calls Piety's prophecy into question. What if it wasn't Jonah who would rise to greatness, rather this bastard? This results in Piety constructing a dark Asher to do her bidding in an attempt to find out who this bastard really is. Because she doesn't know who this child is, she must kill those who knew him to obtain their livers. Livers in the Dark Carnival universe contain secrets, and by eating them you can unlock them. This is why she sends the Dark Asher after those close to Philo. First his mother, then to the head of the orphanage, Morange, the man who clipped his wings as a child, and finally the Haraspix. By killing these people who knew Philo, she can get closer to finding out his identity, killing him once and for all so that she can be at ease that her prophecy, that Jonah, will achieve greatness. The Dark Asher, the creature that was used to do her bidding, was constructed by a patchwork of corpses. As Mima Sawsan says in episode 4,
"There's a strange power in the joining of unlike things."
This joining of unlike things is a common theme throughout the season. Philo himself is half human and half fae. He initially surmises that the monster plaguing the Burg is a Dark Asher, and consults the Haraspix as to the possibility of such a beast. You see, the Dark Asher is believed to be a myth, so Philo asks this witch-type character, gifted in potions and necromancy, if such a creature is possible, and to his surprise, it is. The Haraspix chops it to pieces, but it remains alive. A Dark Asher is never truly killed until its master is. This is seen in the final confrontation between Piety and Philo, where he beheads the creature only for it to reattach its head later on. Piety had learned from the Haraspix how to conjure such a creature. The Haraspix had been an integral part of Piety's family for years, and there's even a picture of them together when Piety was a child. When the Haraspix is killed by Piety's Dark Asher, the Haraspix drinks a special potion which temporarily suspends her in the gloaming, a world that is between day and night, breath and silence. Before her death, she's able to tell Philo of Piety's dark plans. But back to the main story. Quill attempts to assassinate Chancellor Breakspear, but is unsuccessful. Expect to see his character feature more prominently in Season 2. He'll likely be used by the humans to justify greater restrictions on the Fae, as is evidenced by them being rounded up at the end of the season. But with plenty of Fae/Critch sympathizers about, I wouldn't be surprised if Quill finds a way out of jail. Piety, upon learning that her husband knows the identity of his bastard son, kills him in order to find out who it is. By performing the ritual on his liver, and with the notice to release Vin in his undergarments, Piety decides to exploit Philo's greatest weakness, his love for Vin, and get him to come to her. Meanwhile, Ezra holds Agreus and Imogen at gunpoint after he finds out that they've been sleeping together. They're able to turn the tables, but Agreus' assault on Ezra will assuredly result in his arrest, so Imogen and Agreus decide to run from Berg for good. And just in the nick of time, the captain of the ship alerts them that they've been notified to return to port, an order Agreus does not obey. So next season will either A, see them arrested by the authorities, or B, which I think is more plausible, start anew somewhere else where they will eventually aid in the freeing of the Fae in Carnival Row. We also see Ezra, who doesn't look all too pleased about what's just happened, so he'll likely be on the hunt for Agreus and his sister. Philo confronts Piety and battles her Dark Asher, and when things look like all is lost for him, Vin comes to save the day by killing Piety. With her death, the Dark Asher dies as well. They embrace, but this is just the start of their problems. They attempt to leave the Burg, but are stopped by the authorities after a new law sequestering all Fae to the Row has been passed in lieu of the recent assassination of Chancellor Breakspear. Vin is sent to the Row, and Philo goes with her. We even witness the murder of Vin's friend Flurry, which will undoubtedly cause Carnival Row to be a powder keg going into Season 2. But more concerning is the joining of Sophie and Jonah, the Chancellor and official opposition who are secretly in cahoots with one another. It's ironic to see a man whose father stood up for Fae rights now spearheading their destruction.
Today, we have a common enemy. and we must stand as one if we are to prevail.
Carnival Row is a damning critique of how society today is still fueled by racism, segregation, and fear of the other. Carnival Row becoming its own detainment camp at the end of the season, it's clear the creators are drawing from real-life instances. Season 2 has been greenlit, so expect to see Vin and Philo's relationship continue to flourish as they deal with the seemingly insurmountable enemy that is the Burg under the rule of Jonah and Sophie. The Black Ravens will surely lash out at being cooped up, the death of Fleury will have some consequences too in rallying the Fae, and if things continue to get worse, an uprising might be in store for next season. We also haven't heard from the Pact in a bit, so they could always come into play to shake things up. That's it for my breakdown of Season 1 of Carnival Row. I want to hear your thoughts about the season in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe with the bell on. You can follow me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT, and until next time remember, Daddy loves you very much.